Breaking news usually implies something bad or at least stressful. But today, we have breaking news that effectively unlocks a continent.
It really is a massive development.
As of February 17th, 2026, the travel landscape just completely shifted under our feet.
It did. If you're holding a Canadian passport, the Great Wall of paperwork just came tumbling down.
Literally, we are talking about a visa-free policy for Canadian citizens heading to China, up to 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
No embassy appointments, no forms, no waiting. You buy a ticket, you land, and you're in.
But the date, and this is why we do these deep dives, the date they picked is not random at all.
Right. It wasn't just the next slot on the administrative calendar.
No, it was incredibly intentional. February 17th, 2026. That corresponds to the first day of the Lunar New Year, the Spring Festival.
Oh, wow.
In the traditional calendar, that's Zhengyi Chui, the very first day of the first lunar month.
So, on a symbolic level, what are they saying? Why pick that specific day?
Well, think about what New Year's means to us. Resolutions, starting fresh. Now, just amplify that by about 1,000 years of cultural weight.
Okay.
The Lunar New Year is fundamentally about sweeping away the dust of the past. So by aligning the visa-free policy with this date, the message is about turning the page.
It's an invitation.
It's an invitation to leave past complications behind and, start a fresh chapter.
That's a fascinating mix of hard policy and soft cultural diplomacy. It's like saying, come on over, the slate is clean.
And the slate isn't empty either. The research we're looking at today really emphasizes that underneath all the high-level political tension we hear about, there's this bedrock of people-to-people connection that's been there for over a century.
I was surprised by some of the names that came up. I mean, most Canadians know the name Norman Bethune.
But do they know him like a Chinese student knows him? That's the real difference.
How so?
In Canada, Bethune is a historical figure, maybe a trivia answer. In China, he is a household name. His story is part of the primary and secondary school curriculum.
Wait, really? Like every single kid learns about him?
Almost without exception, he's viewed with this immense, culturally ingrained gratitude. When a Canadian travels there, that goodwill is often the first thing they encounter.
And it's not just one doctor. The research also mentioned the West China Union University in Chengdu.
Correct. That's in Sichuan. It was founded in 1910, more than a century ago, by a coalition that included Canadian Christian churches.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's now part of Sichuan University's medical school. In fact, the author of the briefing we're looking at actually studied there.
So you have these deep roots that predate any of the modern political stuff by decades.
Exactly.
That context changes things. It makes the trip feel less like visiting a stranger and more like visiting a place where you already have a footprint. But let's get practical. 30 days is a long time, but China is? Well, it's a civilization masquerading as a country. It's huge.
It's totally overwhelming. You can't just see China.
Yeah.
You absolutely need a strategy.
So, our mission today is to break this down. We're going to use the hub strategy from the research. If you book that flight from Toronto or Vancouver, you're likely landing in one of three major zones.
The north, the east, or the south.
And then we'll talk about escaping into the wild. Let's start at the top, the northern hub, Beijing.
Beijing is the heavyweight. It's the capital, yes, but historically, it's the anchor. It has been the political center for 600 years.
600.
Ever since the Ming Emperor Zhu Dai moved the capital there in 1421.
1421. That's before Columbus even sailed.
Long before. And to understand Beijing, you have to understand where it sits. It's not just in the middle of the country. It's on a fault line.
What do you mean a fault line?
It sits right on the division between the agricultural civilization of the Central Plains and then nomadic civilizations of the steppes.
So it's like a border town, but on a civilizational scale.
Exactly. That's why the Great Wall is there. We think of the wall as a tourist bucket list item. You go, you take a selfie.
Right, maybe slide down the toboggan.
Yeah. But historically, that wall was the physical barrier separating the capital from the Eurasian steppes. It was the shield against the north.
The watchtower.
Precisely. North of that wall is where the Mongols and other nomadic groups launched attacks that rippled across the continent. When you stand on the wall, you aren't just looking at a view. You're standing on the edge of the settled world as they knew it.
That gives it such a different weight. But Beijing isn't just ancient history, right? I mean, you see photos of the skyline and it looks like a sci-fi movie.
And that's the contrast that defines the city. You have the headquarters economy, while tourists are walking through the Forbidden City or Jingshan Park. Just a few blocks away is Financial Street.
So like a Bay Street or a Wall Street.
Very much so. Major banks, regulatory bodies, massive financial institutions, they are all headquartered right there. The author of our notes actually worked on Financial Street for 3 years.
So you have immense modern power sitting right next to the seat of ancient imperial power.
It's a really unique juxtaposition.
Okay, so that's the North. History, politics, finance. Now let's hop on a high-speed train and head east. We're talking Shanghai and the Yangtze River Delta.
This is a completely different flavor. If Beijing is the stoic political center, the Yangtze Delta is the dynamic, aesthetic commercial engine.
The Jiangnan region.
Right. And Jiangnan implies a specific aesthetic. It means south of the river. The research points to cities like Suzhou, which is super easy to get to from Shanghai.
I've heard Suzhou described as the Venice of the East.
And it really earns that title. It's famous for southern charm, small stone bridges, flowing water, these elaborate classical gardens. It's poetic. A huge contrast to the dry, imposing architecture of the north.
But it's not all poetry.
Not at all. Don't let the poetry fool you. This region is a commercial beast.
Which brings us to Yiwu. The notes call it the world's supermarket.
That is barely a metaphor. Yiwu is the global procurement center for small commodities.
Okay, what does that actually mean, small commodity?
Think about all the stuff in your junk drawer, or holiday decorations, or little toys. If you buy a keychain in Paris, a Christmas ornament in New York, or a plastic toy in Brazil, there is a statistically huge chance it passed through Yiwu.
No way.
It is the central nervous system for merchants globally.
That's wild to think that this one city in the Yangtze Delta is stocking the shelves of the entire planet.
It connects local manufacturing to the global market.
Yeah.
So in this one region, you have the high aesthetics of Suzhou and the gritty, high-volume commerce of Yiwu.
Okay, let's keep moving south. The Pearl River Delta.
Guangzhou, the southern hub. And the first thing to understand here is the density. They call it the one-hour living circle.
Because everything is so close.
Because the high-speed rail network is so integrated that Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Zhuhai, and even Hong Kong and Macau function almost like a single megacity. You can move between them in about an hour.
And Shenzhen is the tech capital, right?
It's the hardware capital of the world, specifically a district called Huaicangbai. If you're into electronics, DIY tech, prototyping, this is Mecca.
Seriously?
You can basically build a smartphone from scratch just by walking down the street and buying components off the shelf.
But there's a cultural difference in the south, too. The notes mention that the people here in Guangdong and Fujian provinces are the ones who went global.
This is a crucial distinction. Historically, the North looked inward to defend the border. The South looked outward to the sea. The people of Guangdong and Fujian have this maritime tradition going back centuries.
All the way back to Xing, Fleges.
Exactly. So when we see Chinatowns around the world,
they're mostly from these southern provinces.
Overwhelmingly. The footprint is massive. Southeast Asia, the Philippines, Europe, North America, Central and South America. The author mentions meeting Chinese communities in places as diverse as Peru, Panama, and Mauritius.
Mauritius, that's in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
It shows the reach. And that reach is driven by a very distinct demographic engine. Guangdong has a registered household population of about 100 million. But the permanent resident population, it's 120 million.
That's 20 million people who aren't on the books there.
Those are migrant workers. 20 million people, that's more than half the population of Canada, who have moved from other provinces into the Pearl River Delta to find work. It is the most economically active, fluid population in the country.
You know, this idea of migration actually brings us back home. The research had this fascinating case study about Toronto.
Yes, the diaspora connection.
If you walk into a Chinese bakery or restaurant in Toronto, you're basically hearing history, aren't you?
You are hearing layers of migration. If you listen to the old guard immigrants who've been in Toronto for 20, 30 years, you'll probably hear Cantonese.
Which connects directly back to Guangdong.
Directly. But the newer arrivals, the new wave, they tend to speak Mandarin. They're coming from all over the country.
But there's a third group, right?
No.
The Fujianese community.
And this is where it gets really deep, historically. The notes say they speak dialects, Minnan or Hakka, that are the same as the ones in Taiwan.
Why is that? How did that happen?
It all goes back to a specific event in the year 1661.
That is very specific.
It was a pivotal year. A general named Zheng Chenggong, you might know him as Koxinga in the West, led a military campaign to expel the Dutch colonial forces from Taiwan.
I didn't even realize the Dutch were in Taiwan.
They were until 1661. And when Koxinga pushed them out, he didn't just bring soldiers. He brought a massive influx of families, craftsmen, and farmers from his home province.
Which was Fujian.
Exactly. That moment in 1661 was the starting point of large-scale cultural and linguistic migration from the mainland to the island. So when you hear those dialects in Toronto today, you are hearing the echo of a military campaign from over 300 years ago.
That is mind-blowing. It connects dots I didn't even know were on the page. Okay, so we've done the cities, the history, the economics, but what if I just want to see a panda?
Then you need to leave the coast, you have to head inland. This is our nature and interior segment.
The research points to Sichuan and Yunnan. Let's start with Sichuan. Chengdu is the panda capital.
And that isn't just a marketing slogan, it's biology. The research explains that the latitude and the specific climate of that region create the only environment in the world where pandas can thrive in the wild. You have to go there.
But Chengdu itself has a really different vibe. The notes mention something called an English corner.
It's a lovely detail. At Sichuan University, there's a tradition where locals gather just to practice English with foreigners. It really speaks to the openness of the city. Chengdu is known for being laid back, inclusive, very welcoming.
And then just a 2-hour train ride away, you have Chongqing.
The cyberpunk city.
I've seen the videos, the train that goes through the apartment building.
That's the one. It's an internet-famous city because the topography is so rugged they had to build the city vertically. You have roads stacked on roads, trains cutting through buildings. It's a visual feast.
And if we go even further into the wild, what about Yunnan?
Yunnan and Guangxi are for the geology nerds and the landscape lovers. Places like Dali, Lijiang, and Yangshuo.
What makes them special?
It's the karst formations, these massive limestone peaks that rise straight up out of flat rivers or rice paddies. It looks like a traditional Chinese painting come to life.
And for those who really want to get off the grid, the notes mention Xinjiang and Tibet.
Those are the frontiers. If you want high altitude, vast deserts, and a completely different cultural experience, those are the premier options.
So we have the north for history, the east for commerce, the south for tech and diaspora, and the interior for nature. That is a solid game plan for a 30-day trip.
You could easily fill 30 days and still feel like you rushed it.
I want to circle back to where we started, that date, February 17, 2026. We talked about it being the Lunar New Year.
The anchor of the whole announcement.
But the notes make an important clarification. This isn't just a Chinese holiday.
No, and that's important for travelers to understand. The Spring Festival is a pan-Asian phenomenon. It's celebrated in Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam. When that date hits, a massive chunk of the world is shifting into celebration mode.
And the calendar itself, I mean, I live by my Google Calendar, but the lunar calendar is on a different operating system entirely.
It's the agricultural calendar, and it has serious tenure. It was officially adopted during the Han Dynasty under Emperor Wu. We call it the Taichu calendar.
How far back are we talking?
2,000 years. Just think about that. This calendar has been dictating the rhythm of harvest, celebration, and life for 2 millennia.
And compared to the Gregorian calendar we use.
China only officially adopted the Gregorian calendar for public use in the early 20th century. So you have this modern nation with high-speed trains and AI tech hubs still setting its most critical cultural clock and its new visa policy by a 2,000-year-old system.
That is the perfect summary of what we've talked about today. You're booking a flight on a modern jet, landing in a city with a 600-year-old palace, meeting people whose dialect was shaped by a 17th century war, and your entry date is determined by a Han Dynasty calendar.
Travel is never just about moving through space. In China, you are constantly moving through time.
That's a lot to process, and hopefully it helps you plan your own deep dive. Whether you're heading to the wall, the markets, or the mountains, it sounds like the doors are wider open than they've been in a long time.
It's a rare and exciting opportunity.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.